Welcome to The Explainer. In a world that often feels incredibly divided by identity politics, today we're looking at something absolutely extraordinary. We're going to unpack what is arguably one of the 20th century's most unlikely, astonishing, and honestly, most successful political achievements.
Okay, let's dive into this by picturing two very different lives. First, imagine a Javanese rice farmer in central Java. He speaks Javanese as his absolute first language, and he practices this fascinating syncretic blend of Islam interwoven with ancient Hindu-Buddhist traditions. His whole worldview is shaped by the deeply traditional rice-growing cycle of his village. Now, contrast his life with a Balinese Hindu dancer. She speaks Balinese at home, and her daily life is completely structured around vibrant temple ceremonies and intricate daily offerings. She's practicing Hinduism right in the middle of a Muslim-majority nation.
Now, let's add two more lives to the mix. Consider a Minahasan Christian from North Sulawesi. This person eats pork and meticulously follows the Christian calendar. And then contrast that experience with a Papawa from the easternmost highlands. This Highlander speaks just one of over 300 distinct languages found in that region alone, possessing a culture, a history, and a lived reality that is radically distinct from the first three people we just talked about.
So, looking at these four completely different individuals, representing entirely different worlds, religions, and languages, what could they possibly have in common? Well, if we were to go back just 80 years, the answer would be absolutely nothing. Literally, their great-grandparents wouldn't have shared a single shred of collective identity.
But today, the answer is they are all Indonesian. And here's the crazy part. This incredibly unified national identity isn't the result of thousands of years of organic cultural evolution. Instead, it was a brilliantly invented solution to what seemed like an impossible puzzle. It's a modern identity carefully engineered to hold an incredibly fragmented world together.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the impossible nation. Second, inventing a nation. Third, the 5 principles. Fourth, a shared language. And finally, the ongoing experiment.
Let's jump right into part 1, the impossible nation.
To truly appreciate the miracle of Indonesia, we have to first grasp the staggering, almost unimaginable scale of this archipelago. We're talking about over 270 million people. That makes Indonesia the world's 4th most populous country, right behind India, China, and the US. It's a massive scale of humanity, which makes the fact that it remains unified even more astonishing.
And those 270 million people, they're spread across over 17,000 islands. Geographically, the country spans about 5,000 kilometers from west to east. To put that into perspective for you, that is roughly the distance from New York to London. Historically, all this water presented an absolute logistical nightmare. It made travel, communication, and cohesion incredibly difficult. And then there's the linguistic fragmentation. Get this. Indonesia contains over 700 distinct languages spread across hundreds of ethnic groups. And these aren't just local dialects, they are mutually unintelligible languages. Consider that all of Europe, which, took centuries to build its relatively homogeneous nation-states, has roughly 200 languages. Indonesia, and roughly the same geographic size, has more than triple that amount. It's wild.
And this brilliantly illustrates another major layer of complexity: religion. Indonesia is 87% Muslim, making it the world's largest Muslim-majority nation. But crucially, it structurally accommodates and protects a substantial 10% Christian minority, along with 2% Hindu and 1% Buddhist populations right within its national framework.
Moving on to Section 2, Inventing a Nation. Unlike China or India, which have thousands of years of continuous civilization to draw upon, Indonesia had virtually no shared pre-colonial history. The memory of the 13th century Majapahit Empire was mostly mythological. Back in the 1600s, the Dutch arrived and accidentally laid the geographic groundwork by consolidating hundreds of independent kingdoms into an administrative unit they called the Dutch East Indies. But the real spark? That happened in 1928, with the Sumpah Pemuda, or the Youth Oath. Young nationalist leaders like Sukarno audaciously envisioned a unified state. They basically willed it into being. Today, as a modern political unit, Indonesia only has 79 years of history.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 5 principles.
So what actually keeps this impossible nation from just falling apart? Well, it relies heavily on Pancasila. Think of it as the philosophical glue deliberately designed to hold the country together, by transcending those deep ethnic and religious lines we talked about. The very first principle is brilliantly pragmatic: belief in one supreme God. It asserts that Indonesia is a theistic nation, but notice how it remains entirely agnostic about which specific religion that refers to.
This masterstroke is exactly what allows Muslims, Christians, Hindus, and Buddhists to completely coexist. The following steps, humanitarianism, unity, democracy by consensus, and social justice, build a framework where diverse people can stay faithful to their own traditions, yet stand united as Indonesians.
All right, Section 4, a shared language.
Philosophy is great, but practically speaking, people actually need to be able to talk to each other. The founders chose to base their new national language, Bahasa Indonesia, on a Malay trade language. Why? Because it was neutral. If they had chosen Javanese, the largest ethnic group would have dominated everyone else. If they kept Dutch, it would just maintain those colonial class divides. So, the crucial point is, by choosing a neutral trade language, they brilliantly prevented any single ethnic group from dominating and instantly leveled social hierarchies across the islands.
And finally, Section 5, the ongoing experiment.
Let's move to and see how this builds the everyday Indonesian experience. How does this massive decentralized machine actually function for people living in it today? It relies on a concept called nested identities. In Indonesia, your identities layer perfectly on top of each other. A person can seamlessly be Javanese, deeply Muslim, and proudly Indonesian, all at exactly the same time. Their differences aren't suppressed. They are highly visible, fully accepted, and officially celebrated by the government.
But of course, no experiment is perfect, right? Maintaining this unity is a constant balancing act. Impartially speaking, the nation faces very real, ongoing challenges. Periodic religious tensions, historical secessionist movements in places like Papua and Aceh, and resentment over wealth gaps between the sender in Java and the periphery. However, we have to look at how these tensions are counterbalanced by powerful unifying forces. Over 80 years of deep institutional investment, heavy economic integration between the islands, and shared national threats all require a united front, keeping the whole shebang bound together.
It all really ties back to this bold, poetic aspiration from the 1928 Youth Oath. Back then, there was no motherland, no unified nation, and no widely spoken shared language. It was purely an act of imagination. Yet, against all odds, they willed this massively diverse, seemingly impossible nation into durable reality over the last 8 decades.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to ponder. Will the world's most ambitious political experiment endure the pressures of the 21st century? As modernization pushes toward cultural homogenization and global change, Indonesia's unity requires an active, daily commitment. The fact that it exists at all is an absolute miracle. Whether it continues to thrive is a story still being written. Thanks for joining this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.